In the vast cold expanse of the Andromeda Galaxy, a story of survival and hidden hope unfolded. The Galactic Imperium stretched across thousands of star systems, ruled by Emperor Day One, a powerful leader who believed his empire was unbreakable. For 200 years, humans had been considered a forgotten species, erased from memory and historical records. On a small, unremarkable asteroid cluster located in the outer rim of the Centauri sector, a secret colony of human survivors lived in carefully constructed underground facilities. These were not ordinary survivors, but descendants of those who had escaped the initial planetary destruction during the Great Purge. The colony was led by a woman named Hana Kim, a brilliant strategist who had spent her entire life preparing for a moment of potential revenge. Her parents and grandparents had passed down stories of human resilience, teaching each generation about their lost civilization and the importance of remaining hidden. Their settlement was a marvel of engineering and adaptation. Massive underground chambers, protected by advanced camouflage technology, housed laboratories, living quarters, and training facilities. Solar panels disguised as ordinary asteroid rock collected energy, while sophisticated recycling systems ensured that nothing was wasted. Every member of the colony had a specific role. Some were scientists, working on advanced technologies that could potentially challenge the Imperium. Others were engineers, maintaining complex machinery and developing innovative survival strategies. Military personnel trained continuously, preparing for a potential conflict that seemed impossible to win. Hana Kim's primary focus was intelligence gathering. Using sophisticated quantum communication networks and hidden data collectors, her team mapped the movements of the Galactic Imperium. They studied Imperial fleet patterns, communication protocols, and technological vulnerabilities. Young people in the colony were trained from childhood in multiple disciplines. They learned advanced mathematics, quantum physics, engineering, and strategic planning. Physical training was equally important, with every individual required to maintain peak physical and mental condition. The asteroid colony had developed unique technologies that allowed them to remain undetected. Adaptive. Camouflage systems made their entire settlement invisible to standard Imperial scanning technologies. Quantum encryption protected their communications, ensuring that no external force could intercept their messages. Despite living in constant preparation, the human survivors maintained a sense of community and hope. They celebrated their heritage, preserved historical records, and believed that one day they would reclaim their place in the galaxy. Cultural traditions from Earth were kept alive through storytelling, music, and shared experiences. Their underground laboratories were particularly impressive. Advanced research teams worked on experimental technologies that seemed almost magical. Dimensional shift prototypes, quantum entanglement communication systems, and adaptive AI algorithms were constantly being developed and refined. Hana Kim understood that survival was not just about hiding, but about evolving. She knew that the humans who would eventually challenge the Imperium would need to be fundamentally different from their ancestors. They needed to be smarter, more adaptable, and more united than ever before. The colony's medical facilities were equally advanced. Genetic research allowed them to enhance human capabilities, developing improved resistance to radiation, enhanced cognitive functions, and better adaptation to extreme environments. Each generation became slightly more advanced than the previous one. Communication with the outside world was minimal and carefully controlled. Occasional reconnaissance missions would send small, unmanned probes to gather information about the current state of the galaxy. These missions were risky but provided crucial intelligence about Imperial activities. As years passed, the human colony grew stronger and more sophisticated. They were preparing not just for survival, but for a potential revolution that could change the entire galactic landscape. Every technological advancement, every strategic plan, was a step towards their ultimate goal of reclaiming their place in the universe. The asteroid colony represented more than just a survival settlement. It was a beacon of hope, a testament to human resilience, and a promise of future redemption. They were the hidden seed of humanity, waiting for the right moment to emerge and challenge the powers that had tried to destroy them. Little did Emperor Daewon know that deep in the forgotten corners of space, a civilization was growing, learning and preparing to challenge everything he believed about power and control. In the shadows of the asteroid colony, the resistance movement began to take shape under the careful guidance of Commander Eugene Park. He was a strategic mastermind, born and raised in the hidden human settlement, with a burning desire to understand the full extent of their potential. The underground resistance was more than just a military operation. It was a complex network of scientists, engineers, pilots, and strategists who had spent generations preparing for a moment that seemed almost impossible. Their training was rigorous and comprehensive, covering everything from advanced quantum mechanics to close-quarter combat. Eugene Park had developed a unique approach to resistance. He believed that their strength would not come from traditional military power but from intelligence and technological innovation. Every member of the resistance underwent extensive cross-training, ensuring that each person could adapt to multiple roles if needed. The colony's research facilities were their primary weapon. Hidden deep within the asteroid's core, these laboratories were constantly buzzing with activity. Teams of researchers worked on projects that seemed like science fiction to the outside world. They were developing technologies that could potentially change the balance of power in the galaxy. One of their most promising projects was a stealth communication network. Unlike traditional communication systems, this network used quantum entanglement to send messages that were virtually impossible to intercept or trace. Small quantum communication devices could transmit information across vast distances without leaving any detectable signal. The resistance also focused on understanding their enemy. Detailed holographic maps of the Galactic Imperium covered the walls of their strategic planning rooms. Every fleet movement, every communication protocol, and every technological advancement of the Imperial forces was carefully studied and analyzed. Young resistance members trained in specialized simulation chambers that could recreate entire star systems. These simulations allowed them to practice complex strategic maneuvers and test theoretical combat scenarios. Pilots learned to navigate through impossible spaces, while strategists developed intricate battle plans. Weapons development was another critical area of focus. The team created adaptive technologies that could change their electromagnetic signature instantaneously. Prototype spacecraft could completely alter their appearance and energy output, making them invisible to standard Imperial detection systems. Genetic research played a crucial role in their preparation. Scientists worked on enhancing human capabilities, developing improved neural interfaces and biological adaptations that could give them an edge in potential conflicts. Some of these advancements seemed almost superhuman. Eugene Park's most significant achievement was creating a unified vision among the resistance members. They were not just survivors. They were the future of humanity. Each person understood their role in a larger plan, a plan that had been generations in the making. The resistance maintained strict security protocols. Communication between different teams was limited and carefully controlled. Only a select few knew the full extent of their capabilities. This compartmentalization ensured that if one part of the resistance was discovered, the entire operation would not be compromised. Training was continuous and intense. Physical conditioning was combined with mental preparation. Resistance members learned multiple languages, studied Imperial culture, and developed psychological techniques to understand and predict their enemy's behavior. Their technology was years, if not decades, ahead of what the Galactic Imperium could imagine. Prototype AI systems could predict complex strategic scenarios with remarkable accuracy. Adaptive camouflage technologies made their equipment virtually undetectable. The younger generation of the Resistance was particularly motivated. They had grown up hearing stories of human civilization's past glory, and they were determined to reclaim their place in the galaxy. Their training combined physical prowess with intellectual rigor, creating a new breed of human warrior. Eugene Park often reminded his team that their strength was not in brute force, but in their ability to adapt, think critically, and work together. They were preparing for a conflict that would require more than just military might. They needed to be smarter, more innovative, and more united than their oppressors. As the resistance continued to grow and develop, a sense of anticipation filled their underground facilities. They were preparing for a moment that would change everything, a moment when humanity would no longer be a forgotten species, but a force to be reckoned with. The strategic preparation of the human resistance moved forward with careful precision. Commander Eugene Park stood before a massive holographic display, his eyes scanning the intricate network of Imperial systems that covered the galactic map. Years of careful planning had led to this moment. The Resistance had identified 3 critical vulnerabilities in the Galactic Imperium's infrastructure. These were not just military targets, but complex communication and energy networks that powered the entire Imperial system. Their first target was the central communication hub located in the Orion sector. This massive space station controlled most of the Imperial communication networks. Destroying it would create massive communication blackouts across multiple star systems. The team had spent months developing a unique infiltration strategy that would make their attack seem like a technical malfunction rather than a deliberate assault. Advanced quantum encryption technologies developed in their underground laboratories would be the key to their success. The Resistance had created special data packets that could penetrate Imperial firewall systems without triggering standard alarm protocols. These packets were designed to look like routine maintenance updates, making them virtually undetectable. Young engineers worked tirelessly on adaptive camouflage technologies. They developed special nano-coating materials that could change electromagnetic signatures in milliseconds. Spacecraft and equipment could now transform their appearance and energy output, becoming invisible to standard Imperial detection systems. The Resistance's scientific team had also developed breakthrough neural interface technologies. Special implants allowed team members to communicate silently and share complex strategic information instantly. This gave them a significant advantage in coordination and real-time decision-making. Satellite reconnaissance missions had been running for years, gathering critical intelligence about Imperial fleet movements and technological capabilities. Every piece of information was carefully analyzed, creating a comprehensive understanding of their enemy's strengths and weaknesses. Training simulations became increasingly complex. Resistance members practiced scenarios that seemed impossible. They learned to navigate through dense asteroid fields, hack complex communication systems, and operate under extreme psychological pressure. Each simulation pushed the boundaries of human capability. Biological enhancements played a crucial role in their preparation. Scientists had developed genetic modifications that improved human resilience, cognitive processing, and physical endurance. These enhancements were subtle but significant, creating a new generation of human operators who could perform beyond normal human limitations. Psychological preparation was equally important. The Resistance understood that their battle would not just be fought with technology, but with strategic thinking and mental resilience. Team members underwent extensive training in psychological warfare, learning to predict and manipulate Imperial decision-making processes. Energy warfare became a key component of their strategy. The team developed technologies that could disrupt Imperial energy networks without leaving traceable damage. They could potentially shut down entire star system infrastructures without firing a single weapon. Eugene Park's most innovative strategy involved creating multiple decoy operations. False communication signals and manufactured intelligence would be sent out, confusing Imperial tracking systems. This would make their actual operations much harder to predict or intercept. The Resistance's AI systems had become remarkably sophisticated. Complex algorithms could predict Imperial fleet movements with incredible accuracy. These systems could simulate thousands of potential scenarios, helping the Resistance plan for almost any potential outcome. Communication between Resistance teams was now virtually undetectable. Quantum entanglement communication devices allowed them to send messages across vast distances without any traditional signal transmission. These communications were impossible to intercept or trace. Every member of the Resistance understood the significance of their mission. They were not just preparing for a battle, but for the potential rebirth of human civilization. The weight of generations of survival and hope rested on their shoulders. As the final preparations were completed, a sense of anticipation filled their underground facilities. Years of planning, technological development, and strategic thinking were about to be put to the ultimate test. The Galactic Imperium had no idea what was coming. The human resistance was ready, silent, patient, and incredibly dangerous. They waited for the perfect moment to strike. The first strike came without warning. Imperial monitoring stations suddenly went dark across multiple star systems, creating an eerie silence that quickly spread panic through the Galactic Imperium's command structure. Emperor Day One sat in his massive command center, watching in disbelief as communication networks collapsed one by one. The holographic displays flickered and died, leaving nothing but static and confusion. Something was happening that defied all known military strategies. The human resistance had chosen their targets with surgical precision. They didn't attack with traditional weapons, but with something far more dangerous: advanced technological warfare that dismantled Imperial systems from within. Each attack was calculated, each movement planned with millimeter-perfect accuracy. Their first major assault targeted the Imperial communication relays in the Centauri sector. Quantum-encrypted data packets infiltrated the system, causing massive communication breakdowns. Imperial fleet commanders found themselves suddenly disconnected, unable to communicate or coordinate their defenses. Specialized resistance teams had spent years developing technologies that could penetrate the most secure Imperial systems. They had created adaptive algorithms that could predict and counteract Imperial defensive protocols almost instantaneously. What seemed like random attacks were actually carefully orchestrated strategic movements. The resistance used advanced holographic technology to create multiple false signals. Imperial defense systems were bombarded with conflicting information, creating massive confusion. Ships were sent on wild chase missions, responding to threats that didn't actually exist. Eugene Park watched from the underground command center, his team working with machine-like precision. Each operator controlled multiple systems simultaneously, their enhanced neural interfaces allowing them to process information at speeds far beyond normal human capabilities. The Imperial military initially believed they were experiencing a massive technical malfunction, but as more systems went offline, the true nature of the attack became clear. This was a coordinated assault unlike anything they had ever encountered. Resistant spacecraft, equipped with advanced adaptive camouflage, moved through Imperial defense lines like ghosts. They could change their electromagnetic signature in milliseconds, becoming invisible to tracking systems. Traditional weapons were useless against an Emperor Day One watched in horror as his carefully constructed empire began to crumble. Entire fleet segments found themselves completely isolated, unable to communicate or receive orders. The technological superiority he had relied on for generations was suddenly meaningless. The Resistance had studied Imperial systems for decades. They knew every weakness, every potential vulnerability. Their attack was like a perfectly designed machine, moving with cold, calculated precision. Each movement was planned, each action designed to create maximum disruption. Specialized AI systems developed by the Resistance predicted Imperial responses with incredible accuracy. They were always 3 steps ahead, countering every defensive maneuver before it could be fully implemented. Communication intercepts revealed the growing panic within Imperial ranks. Commanders who had never known defeat were now experiencing complete system failure. The humans they had believed were extinct had returned as something entirely unexpected. As the attack continued, it became clear that this was more than just a military operation. This was a complete technological revolution. The Resistance wasn't just fighting, they were fundamentally changing the nature of galactic warfare. Eugene Park allowed himself a small smile. Years of preparation, generations of careful planning had led to this moment. The humans were no longer survivors. They had become something entirely new, a technological force that could reshape the entire galaxy. The unexpected counterattack had begun, and the Galactic Imperium would never be the same again. The final phase of the Resistance's plan unfolded like a perfectly choreographed dance of destruction. Emperor Daiwan watched in absolute terror as his massive Imperial fleet began to disappear, not through explosion or conventional destruction, but through something far more mysterious: quantum dimensional shift technology. Developed in the deepest laboratories of the human resistance was their ultimate weapon. Commander Yujin Park had spent decades perfecting a technology that could literally move entire fleet segments into alternate dimensions with surgical precision. The first signs of the Vanishing Act began subtly. Imperial battleships would suddenly drop out of communication networks, their massive structures simply blinking out of existence. Tracking systems showed nothing. No explosion, no debris, just complete absence. Resistance operators worked with incredible coordination. Their enhanced neural interfaces allowed them to control complex dimensional shift technologies with unprecedented accuracy. Each movement was calculated down to the smallest quantum fluctuation. Specialized quantum generators created momentary dimensional rifts that could transport massive objects across different reality planes. These weren't simple transportation methods. They were precise surgical strikes that removed Imperial assets from their current dimensional space. Emperor Daiwan's command center became a place of growing panic. His top military commanders reported impossible scenarios. Entire fleet segments were disappearing without a trace. Communication networks collapsed, and tracking systems showed nothing but empty space where thousands of ships had previously existed. The Resistance had studied dimensional physics for generations. What seemed like magic to the Imperial forces was actually the result of decades of careful scientific research. They had discovered methods of manipulating quantum spaces that went far beyond traditional understanding. Each dimensional shift was carefully targeted. The Resistance didn't just randomly remove Imperial assets. They strategically selected critical components of the Imperial infrastructure. Communication hubs, military command centers, and key strategic locations simply ceased to exist in their current dimensional plane. Yujin Park understood that this was more than just a military operation. This was a complete reimagining of technological warfare. They weren't just defeating the Galactic Imperium. They were demonstrating a level of technological capability that was almost incomprehensible. The human resistance had become something entirely new. They were no longer survivors hiding in asteroids. They had evolved into a technological force that could reshape reality itself. Each dimensional shift was a statement of their newfound power. Imperial scientists tried desperately to understand what was happening. Their most advanced scanning technologies showed nothing. The ships weren't destroyed. They simply no longer existed in their current dimensional space. It was a level of technological manipulation beyond anything they could comprehend. As the Vanishing Act continued, the Galactic Imperium began to crumble. Communication networks collapsed, military command structures dissolved, and entire star systems found themselves suddenly disconnected. The empire that had ruled for centuries was falling apart. The Resistance's AI systems predicted and countered every potential Imperial response. They were always 3 steps ahead, creating dimensional shifts that left no possibility of counterattack. It was like watching a perfect strategic game where one side had complete control. Emperor Daiwan made his final transmission, a message of complete confusion and terror. He couldn't understand how a species he had believed extinct could suddenly demonstrate such incredible technological capabilities. The humans had transformed from victims to masters of reality itself. The final dimensional shifts were the most dramatic. Critical Imperial infrastructure simply disappeared, leaving nothing but empty space. Entire star systems found themselves suddenly disconnected with no way to understand what had happened. Commander Yujin Park watched the final stages of their plan with a sense of calm determination. Generations of preparation, decades of scientific research, and years of careful planning had led to this moment. The humans were no longer hiding. They were declaring their return to the galaxy. The last transmission intercepted by Imperial systems was a simple message. We were never gone. We were waiting. And then, silence. The Galactic Imperium had been reduced to nothing more than a memory, removed from existence by a species they had once believed they had completely destroyed.